Paleontology is a notoriously difficult science. It basically tries to figure out what extinct animals were like just going off of their bones, which, sometimes, are barely intact, other times hundreds of millions of years old, and many times both of these things. So to say this line of work is hard is an understatement. Therefore, it's not hard to comprehend how paleontologists have made a few mistakes over the years. Many times, these errors are rather small and common, like perhaps they slightly exaggerate the size of an animal. However, once in a while, a mistake is made that is neither small nor unimportant big enough to change our entire perception of an animal and leaving many scratching their heads, which is nicely demonstrated by these baffling creatures. Let's begin with a case that was almost inevitable, the first dinosaur ever described. Meet Megalosaurus, the Jurassic theropod that became a legend mainly for being misunderstood. It was 1824. People knew next to nothing about dinosaurs. The term dinosaur itself hadn't even been invented yet. So when English paleontologist William Buckland examined some bone bits of vertebrae, part of a lower jaw, and a femur, he concluded he'd stumbled upon a gigantic carnivorous lizard. A four-legged one, of course, because in his mind anything big and lizardy must walk on all fours. He even imagined the creature as amphibious, preferring water over land, somewhat like a monstrous crocodile. He estimated that with flesh it would stretch over 40 feet. But then, in what can only be described as a paleontological ego war, a rival discovered a larger bone, which seemingly triggered a bout of scientific insecurity. Buckland bumped up the estimate to 70 feet. Because if you're going to guess, you might as well guess big. Here's where things get even weirder. Buckland, like many scientists of his time, was deeply religious, which clashed a bit with the whole giant meat-eating reptile from before Adam and Eve problem. According to Christian doctrine, death and suffering only appeared after the original sin, but Megalosaurus was clearly a predator, so how could it have existed before sin? Buckland solved this theological conundrum with remarkable creativity. He claimed Megalosaurus didn't hunt the innocent. No, it was a merciful killer, designed to end the lives of the old and infirm, thereby reducing total suffering. Yes, the Jurassic version of hospice care. And all of this was taken quite seriously. But the truth about Megalosaurus eventually emerged, not because Buckland suddenly realized his errors, but because paleontology evolved. Other theropods were discovered more complete, better preserved. And gradually, it became clear, Megalosaurus didn't walk on all fours, it was bipedal. It wasn't amphibious either, it lived entirely on land, and it definitely wasn't 70 feet long. More like 30 feet. It weighed just over a ton. Still impressive, but not the biblical Leviathan Buckland had envisioned. Even so, for its time, it was the apex predator of Jurassic England. But it was far from the only prehistoric animal to be so thoroughly misread. Let's fast forward to the 1980s. In Argentina, a fossil emerges from the depths of the Bajo de Vel Formation, carboniferous in age, ancient, strange, and big. It included a large carapace, a few legs, and other bits. When the paleontologist examined it, he was convinced this was a prehistoric spider, but not just any spider, a massive one, bigger than the Goliath bird-eater, which until then held the title of the world's largest arachnid. This new creature measured a stunning 13 inches across, a nightmare with 8 legs. Naturally, it was dubbed Megarachnith Great Spider. Museums loved it, documentaries embraced it, toy lines probably got inspired, but the celebration was premature. Some scientists raised concerns. The carapace was segmented in a strange way. The Chelicerathos' creepy spider fangs were oddly shaped. Some features didn't quite match what's expected of arachnids. Still, the excitement drowned out the doubts, and since the original fossil was locked away, critics could only study plaster casts. For 25 years, Megarachne remained a giant spider in the public imagination, until 2005. A second, far more complete specimen was discovered, and the truth could no longer be ignored. This giant spider was actually a Eurypterida sea scorpion, a relative of arachnids, yes, but not a spider, and not even close. The fossil's features, especially the legs and body segments, matched another genus called Woodwardopterus. So, what had once been the world's largest spider was now a marine arthropod that probably sifted through mud for tiny prey in freshwater floodplains. Not a predator skittering through ancient forests, but a bottom feeder chilling in swamps. a drastic downgrade for the arachnophobic thrill it once was. Still, the misidentification wasn't entirely outlandish. Sea scorpions and spiders are both arthropods, and when working with half fossils and wishful thinking, mistakes are easy. Let's move from the watery depths to the claws of a titan. You've probably heard of Therizinosaurus. The name alone paints a picture. That beast with claws so long they looked like prehistoric scythes. But if you think it was always known as the Wolverine of the dinosaur world, think again. When its claws were first discovered in Mongolia during the 1940s, scientists didn't think they belonged to a dinosaur. They thought they belonged to a turtle, a giant aquatic turtle to be exact. Why? Because those claws were found near turtle bones. And because the environment was full of ancient river sediments, one paleontologist proposed an aquatic herbivore that used its scythe-like claws to rake up seaweed. He even gave it the name Therizinosaurus cheiloniformis, scythe reptile, turtle-shaped. It wasn't until more fossils were found, specifically parts of limbs, ribs, and hips, that paleontologists realized something was off. The claws matched some found on theropods, predatory dinosaurs. Though in Therizinosaurus's case, it wasn't a killer, more of a weirdo. This massive, feathered, slow-moving omnivore likely used its claws for digging or defense, maybe display. No one is entirely sure. But one thing is certain, it was not a seaweed-scooping turtle. It was a dinosaur. A weird, wonderful, utterly misunderstood dinosaur. And speaking of misunderstood reptiles, let's talk about the granddaddy of all misinterpretations, Pterodactylus, the first pterosaur ever discovered, and, naturally, one of the most wrongly described. When its fossil was first studied in the late 1700s, people were clueless about flying reptiles. The paleontologist who examined it assumed it was a sea creature. Because weird animals live in the ocean, right? And this one was very weird. He thought its wings were actually flippers, which it flapped underwater to move around. Others thought it was amphibious like a seal. It didn't help that no one could agree if it was a bird, a reptile, a mammal, or something in between. It wasn't until the early 1800s that another scientist noticed the wing structure resembled that of a bat-long fingers supporting membranes. He named it Pterodactylus, meaning winged finger, accurate at last. But it took decades for people to accept that pterosaurs were flyers. Even after that, the idea of them being aquatic lingered for a while. Ironically, some species probably were decent swimmers. But Pterodactylus itself wasn't. It was small, light, and lived near lagoons, probably feeding on insects and small fish. So yes, near water. But no, not flapping like a penguin. Now, if you thought confusing a reptile for a sea creature was bad, what about mistaking a single animal for 3 different ones? That's exactly what happened with Anomalocaris. When its fossils were first found in Canada in the late 1800s, they were in pieces. A mouth here, some front appendages over there, a trunk in another spot. Scientists concluded they belonged to 3 different animals, a jellyfish, a shrimp, and a sea cucumber. Logical, if you ignore how they were all found together. More fossils eventually solved the mystery. It was all one animal, a bizarre, alien-looking predator from the Cambrian seas. Anomalocaris was unlike anything known at the time. It had a radial mouth with terrifying tooth plates, long grasping arms, and a segmented body with flaps it used to swim. It's now considered one of Earth's first apex predators. But for decades, it was 3 random animals. Go figure. And if you think that was wild, wait until you hear about the dinosaur known only by its arms. Horrifying, massive arms. In the 1960s, paleontologists found some gigantic forelimbs in Mongolia. Just the arms, no body. And these weren't ordinary arms, they were nearly 8 feet long with huge claws, the biggest arms of any bipedal animal ever found. They named it Deinocheirosternal hands. And then, nothing. For decades, that was it. Speculation ran wild. Was it a predator? A T-Rex with longer reach? A tree-dwelling sloth monster? A terrifying desert ghost? No one knew. Until 2013, when a more complete specimen was found, and it was nothing like the legends. Deinocheirus was an enormous ornithomimosaur-think ostrich dinosaur with a duck-like beak, a humped back, and yes, those freaky arms. But it wasn't a killer. Its claws were blunt. Its stomach had fish, scales, and plant material. An omnivore, a big, goofy-looking omnivore. Its legend had made it into a traveling exhibit. Its reality made it a gentle giant, proof that even with the most tantalizing fossils, paleontology sometimes builds castles in the sand. Sometimes the bones lie. Or rather, they don't tell the whole truth. And just when you think fossil errors only happen with prehistoric beasts, we get to the one that fooled everyone for 66 million years, not because we misread it, but because we thought it was dead. And then it showed up on a fisherman's boat. But that, as they say, is a story for another time, or rather, a story for right now. Because the tale of the creature that fooled science without ever being extinct is one of the greatest surprises paleontology has ever encountered. It's the story of the Coelacanth fish, so ancient, it swam the oceans when dinosaurs were still a distant dream. Its fossils date back over 250 million years, and for the longest time, scientists believed it had vanished during the Great Extinction that wiped out the non-avian dinosaurs. The evidence seemed clear. Its kind vanished from the fossil record 66 million years ago. Gone. Extinct. Buried by time. Then came 1938. Off the coast of South Africa, local fishermen hauled in their nets, and among the usual sharks and rays, they found something unusual. A large blue fish 5 feet long, with thick armor-like scales and strange limb-like fins. None of them had ever seen anything like it. Fortunately, one of them thought to contact a museum curator, who knew immediately that this fish was something extraordinary. She sent a sketch and a few scale samples to a marine biologist named J.L.B. Smith, and when he saw it, he didn't just get excited, he nearly fainted, because the creature in the sketch looked like something straight out of a Devonian exhibit. And he was right. It was a coelacanth. Alive. Not extinct. Not gone. Swimming in modern oceans after a 66 million year hiatus. It was as if a dodo had flown in through your window, or a woolly mammoth had walked past your driveway. The living fossil had returned, or, more accurately, it had never left. We had simply missed it. The scientific world went into a frenzy. Expeditions were launched, more coelacanths were found, another species turned up near Indonesia. And suddenly, this so-called extinct group of lobe-finned fish was back in the game. And what a game they played. Coelacanths were unlike anything else alive today. Their fins moved in a strange, rotating motion, hinting at the evolutionary leap toward limbs. Their skeletons held ancient traits, and some could live for a century. Far from primitive, they were survivors. And their DNA told a fascinating story. Not only had they persisted through the ages, they had continued to evolve, quietly adapting in deep, dark parts of the ocean while the rest of the planet changed above them. This was more than just a lucky catch. It was a reminder of how little we truly know. We've only explored a fraction of the ocean. And if a fish once believed extinct for millions of years could be hiding just a few hundred meters beneath the waves, what else might be out there? The coelacanth taught us that absence in the fossil record doesn't always mean extinction. Sometimes it just means we haven't looked in the right place. But not all paleontological mistakes are due to missing fossils or living ghosts. Sometimes we misread what we already have so badly that entire museums and textbooks have to change. Take the case of Brontosaurus. For decades, it was one of the most famous dinosaurs of all time. Majestic, thunderous, towering. And then, one day, scientists told the world it never existed. Back in the 1870s, two rival paleontologists were racing to outdiscover each other in what became known as the Bone Wars. In their haste, mistakes were made, bones got mixed up. Species were named before being fully analyzed. In 1879, one of them discovered a nearly complete sauropod skeleton. But instead of realizing it was just a variation of an already named dinosaur, Apatosaurus gave it a new name, Brontosaurus. For a while, both names lived side by side. But as more fossils were found and studied, experts realized they were likely the same animal. The name Apatosaurus had come first, so by the rules of taxonomy, Brontosaurus was invalid. And so it vanished from the official scientific record. But not from popular culture. Brontosaurus had already captured the public imagination. It was in movies, books, and museum halls. Try telling a kid that their favorite dinosaur didn't exist. Good luck with that. And here's the twist decades later. In the 2010s, newer studies reanalyzed the data and concluded, maybe, just maybe, Brontosaurus was distinct enough after all. And thus, like the Coelacanth, it returned from extinction. This time not from nature, but from scientific limbo. Now, let's rewind to a much older era, to the Cambrian explosion when life was just beginning to get weird. Imagine an animal that looks like a giant spaceship vacuum cleaner with flippers, and you've got Opabinia. When its fossil was first shown to a room full of scientists, they literally burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but because no one could believe it was real. 5 eyes, a long snout like a vacuum hose, a segmented body with fins like a sea slug. It looked like someone had mashed together spare parts from failed sea creatures. And yet, it was very real. Opabinia was a legitimate resident of the ancient Cambrian oceans, drifting over the seafloor, using its weird trunk-like appendage to scoop up food. Its structure was so strange that it didn't fit into any known group at first. Scientists had to invent a whole new classification just to describe it. And only much later did they realize it might have been a close cousin of the arthropods. Today, we call it a STEM arthropod, a glimpse into the evolutionary experiments of early life. But for a long time, no one knew what to do with it. Because when a fossil stares back at you with 5 eyes and a smile, even the experts can get confused. The deeper we dig, the more we learn, but also the more we realize how wrong we've been. Sometimes the errors are understandable. Other times, they're the result of rushing, ego, or just good old-fashioned guesswork. Yet every mistake, every correction brings us closer to the truth. Like the case of Spinosaurus. For years, it was thought to be a standard theropod predator, a meat-eater in the mold of T-Rex. Then came new fossil finds, some of them literally smuggled out of desert sand. Suddenly, everything changed. Spinosaurus wasn't just a land hunter. It had adaptations for swimming. Its body was more crocodilian. Its legs were shorter. It had dense bones for buoyancy control. And its sail-like spine made it look like no other dinosaur. Turns out, it may have been the first semi-aquatic dinosaur, a river hunter that fished in the shallows, snapping up prey with long jaws. This upended everything we thought we knew about dinosaur ecology. It wasn't just about dry plains and forests. Now rivers and wetlands were in play, and it showed how much remains undiscovered or misunderstood. Even the mighty T-Rex has had its share of makeovers, from tail-dragging lizard to balanced apex predator, from scaly monster to possibly feathered giant. Some depictions showed it running like a sprinter. Others now say it probably moved more like a fast walker, and debates continue about whether it was a hunter, scavenger, or opportunistic feeder. The truth? Probably all of the above. And then there's the matter of color. For decades, dinosaurs were painted dull, brown, or green, safe, lizard-like colors. But newer studies, using microscopic analysis of fossilized feathers, suggest that some dinosaurs may have been brightly colored, reds, oranges, even iridescent hues like hummingbirds. Suddenly, the prehistoric world looks more like a jungle rave than a dusty savanna. It's humbling to realize that even the animals we think we know best are still wrapped in mystery. Every fossil is a puzzle piece, but often we don't know what the final picture looks like. We just guess. Then revise, then guess again. And that's the beauty of paleontology. It's not just about digging up bones, it's about rewriting the story of life over and over again. So next time you walk past a dinosaur exhibit, remember, what you're seeing might not be the final draft. The truth is still buried somewhere, waiting to be unearthed. And here at Prehistoric Medievals, we'll be here to tell those stories, bones, blunders, and all.